If you've always felt different from everyone else, if you've never quite managed to fit into any clique, if there's a part of you that feels like you're watching the world from the outside while everyone else is just living it, then you need to hear what Albert Einstein wrote in a letter that remained hidden for decades. Because Einstein wasn't just a physics genius, he was someone who spent his entire life feeling exactly how you feel right now. And what he discovered about this sensation, this feeling of being different, will completely change how you see yourself. Einstein wrote something that almost no one knows. He said, "I'm truly a lone traveler and have never belonged to my country, my home, my friends, or even my immediate family, with my whole heart. In the face of all these ties, I have never lost a sense of distance and a need for solitude." Read that again. The most famous man of the 20th century, surrounded by admirers, invited to dinners with presidents and kings, his name known in every corner of the planet. This man felt like a stranger everywhere he went, and society never told you this. Because if you knew that Einstein felt this way, maybe you'd start to question whether this feeling of not belonging is actually a problem. And here's the truth: they hid from you. You've been taught that feeling different is a defect, that you need to adapt, that there's something wrong with you if you can't easily connect with others. Self-help gurus say you need to work on your social skills. Society says you need to bend over backwards to fit in. Your family probably spent years trying to mold you into being more normal. But Einstein discovered something completely different. He discovered that this feeling of separation isn't a flaw. It's a deeper perception of reality. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what he meant by that. Most people live inside a bubble. They accept social rules without question. They pursue careers because it's what's expected. They get married because it's what everyone does. They believe the same things their neighbors believe, and inside that bubble, they feel comfortable, connected, part of something. But you can't do that completely, can you? There's a part of you that's always one step removed, observing, analyzing, asking why things are the way they are, feeling that there's something more beyond the surface that everyone else accepts as reality. Einstein called this the optical delusion of consciousness, and this discovery, which he shared in a private letter in 1950, is one of the deepest truths he left for humanity. In February of 1950, a man named Jack Miller was devastated. His 11-year-old son had just died of polio. Miller was the political director of the World Jewish Congress. He could have sought out any rabbi or religious leader for comfort, but he chose to write to Einstein, and Einstein's response went down in history. Einstein wrote, "A human being is part of a whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us." Pay attention to what Einstein is saying here. The feeling that you are a separate being, isolated, different from everyone else, is not the reality. It's a delusion, a limitation of our consciousness. In reality, you are part of something infinitely greater. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself through a specific perspective. And here's the part that changes everything. Einstein continued, "Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." The person who feels different, who can't fit into the social bubble, is often closer to this truth than those who feel perfectly integrated. Because when you're not completely absorbed by the illusion of separation, you begin to glimpse the deeper connection that Einstein described. But wait, this doesn't mean that feeling different is automatically good. It's not that simple. Einstein knew the pain of loneliness. He wrote elsewhere, "I live in that solitude which is painful in youth, but delicious in the years of maturity." Painful in youth. He didn't minimize the suffering. He knew that feeling like an outsider when you're young is a genuinely difficult experience, that there's real pain in not fitting in, that loneliness can be devastating. But he also discovered something that most people never discover, that this same loneliness can transform, that there's a path from pain to peace, and that path goes through understanding what the sensation of being different really means. Let's dig deeper into this. Why do some people feel different while others seem to fit in naturally? Why have you spent your life with this feeling of looking inward through a window while everyone else is at the party? The superficial answer is that there's something wrong with you. Maybe you're too shy. Maybe you have some atypical personality trait. Maybe your childhood experiences scarred you somehow. Modern psychology has dozens of explanations for what it calls difficulty with social connection, but Einstein had a different explanation. He wrote, "Although I am a typical loner in daily life, my consciousness of belonging to the invisible community of those who strive for truth, beauty, and justice has preserved me from feeling isolated." Read that carefully. Einstein didn't feel connected to the people around him. He didn't feel part of his family, his country, his friends, but he didn't feel isolated. Why? Because he felt part of something bigger, an invisible community of people who seek truth, beauty, and justice, not a physical community, not a group of people who meet every Sunday, but a connection through time and space with all those who share a certain orientation to life. Spinoza, who lived 300 years before Einstein, was part of this community. Socrates, who lived 2,500 years before, was part of this community. People you'll never meet personally, who aren't even born yet, are part of this community. And if you feel different, there's a good chance that you're part of it too. The feeling of not belonging to the common world may be exactly the sign that you belong to something different. Not better, necessarily, just different. A community, a tribe, of people who just can't accept things at face value, who need to dig deeper, who can't simply follow the herd. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Einstein didn't think this invisible community was just some comforting metaphor. He believed it reflected something real about the nature of reality. Remember that optical delusion of consciousness? That feeling that you're a separate being, isolated. It's an illusion. In reality, you're part of the universe, and so is every other consciousness. This means that, on a fundamental level, you've never really been separate from anyone. The loneliness you feel isn't because you're genuinely alone. It's because your consciousness is trapped in a limited perspective that makes it seem like you are. But if you could see reality as it truly is, you'd see that you're connected to absolutely everything. This isn't just some vague mysticism. Einstein was a rigorous scientist. He came to this conclusion through decades of thinking about the nature of space, time, and reality. Relativity showed that what seems separate in space can be connected in ways our intuition can't grasp. Quantum physics, which Einstein helped create even without fully agreeing with it, showed that separate particles can be entangled in ways that defy our notion of separation. Einstein saw something that most people don't, that separation is appearance, not substance, that connection is more fundamental than isolation, that feeling different from others can be, paradoxically, the first step to realizing that you've never truly been separate from anything. Now, let's talk about how this applies to your life. If you've spent years feeling like an outsider, you've probably developed some strategies to cope with it. Maybe you feign interest in conversations that bore you to tears. Maybe you force yourself to attend social events that drain you. Maybe you've built a social persona that doesn't reflect who you really are. Maybe you've simply isolated yourself, giving up on trying to connect. Einstein had a different approach. He didn't pretend to be normal. He didn't force himself to participate in things that didn't interest him. He didn't build a false persona, but he also didn't isolate himself completely. He found a middle ground. He wrote, "My passionate sense of social justice and social responsibility has always contrasted oddly with my pronounced lack of need for direct contact with other human beings and human communities." Einstein had compassion for humanity. He cared deeply about justice, about peace, about the well-being of people, but he didn't need constant social contact. He could love humanity without needing to be at parties every weekend. And maybe that's the most important lesson. You don't need to choose between forcing yourself to be social and isolating yourself completely. There's a third way. You can connect deeply with ideas, with truth, with beauty, with justice, with the very structure of the universe. And through those connections, find a sense of belonging that doesn't depend on social approval. Einstein belonged to the universe. He belonged to the search for truth. He belonged to the invisible community of seekers throughout history, and that was enough for him. But I need to be honest about something. This path doesn't eliminate all the pain. Einstein still felt loneliness. His marriages were difficult. His relationship with his children was complicated. He wasn't some enlightened person floating above human concerns. He was a man who struggled with the same issues we all do. The difference is that he found a framework for understanding that struggle, a way to see his loneliness, not as evidence that something was wrong with him, but as a characteristic of a consciousness that's starting to perceive the illusion of separation. And that shift in perspective changes everything. When you see your feeling of being different as a defect, you spend energy trying to fix it, trying to fit in, trying to be more like others. And when that doesn't work, you feel even more inadequate. But when you see that feeling the way Einstein did, as a sign that you're perceiving something that most don't, the energy shifts. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to understand yourself. You don't need to fit into the bubble. You need to find your own form of connection. And here's the most surprising part of Einstein's story. At the end of his life, he said that the loneliness that was painful in his youth became delicious in his maturity. The same feeling that caused suffering transformed into something precious. Why? Because he stopped fighting against his nature. He stopped trying to be something he wasn't. He stopped comparing himself to people who lived differently. And in doing so, he found peace. The delicious loneliness he describes isn't bitter isolation. It's the ability to be with yourself without despair, to appreciate the silence, to find company in ideas, in beauty, in mystery, to feel connected to the universe even when you're physically alone. This transformation doesn't happen automatically. It's not something you decide to do and poof, you're there. It's a process that takes years, sometimes decades. But Einstein's message is clear. It's possible. The pain of being different can transform into something completely different, and maybe that's why you're watching this right now. You've probably gone through moments where you wished you were normal, where you envied people who seemed to connect easily with others, where you wondered why you can't simply fit in like everyone else seems to manage. Einstein went through that too. The man whose name has become synonymous with genius felt like an outsider everywhere. And even so, he found a way of living that made sense to him, a way that honored his nature instead of fighting against it. You don't need to change who you are. You need to understand who you are. And Einstein, through his private letters and personal reflections, has given us a map for that journey. The feeling of being different isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's not a flaw in your programming. It's an ability to perceive something that most don't. You're perceiving the illusion that we're all separate, the illusion that you need to fit into a social box to have value, the illusion that there's a right way to be human. and you're failing to achieve it. Einstein saw through those illusions, and he's left you an invitation to do the same. But there's more I need to tell you, because intellectually understanding what Einstein said is just the first step. The real question is, how do you live this in practice? Einstein left specific clues about this in his letters and writings, and these clues form a path that anyone can follow. The first clue is in what he called the cosmic religious feeling. In 1930, Einstein published an essay in the New York Times magazine where he described 3 stages of religiousness. The first is the religion of fear, where people worship gods to avoid punishment. The second is the moral religion, where people follow rules, expecting rewards. But the third, the cosmic religious feeling, is completely different. Einstein wrote, "The individual feels the futility of human desires and aims, and the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves both in nature and in the world of thought. Individual existence impresses him as a sort of prison, and he wants to experience the universe as a single significant whole." Did you catch what he said? Individual existence impresses him as a sort of prison. The same word he used in the letter to Jack Miller. Einstein viewed the feeling of being a separate individual as a form of imprisonment, and the cosmic religious feeling was the experience of breaking free from that cage. But how do you cultivate this feeling? Einstein gave clues about that too. He said this feeling came through the contemplation of the order of the universe, through the study of nature, through AWE in the face of mystery, not through traditional religious rituals, not through following rules, but through a genuine openness to the wonder of existence. You've probably experienced glimpses of this already, moments when you looked at the night sky and felt something you couldn't put into words. Moments when one idea connected to another, and you glimpsed a larger pattern. Moments when the beauty of something took you outside your normal sense of being a separate individual. These moments aren't illusions or sentimentality. For Einstein, they were glimpses of a deeper truth. The truth that you're not really separate from anything. The truth that the consciousness you experience is the universe experiencing itself. And here's something that almost no one connects. Einstein said the feeling of separation is a prison, but he also said that people who feel different are often closer to escaping that prison. Why? Because when you don't fit into the social bubble, you're forced to look beyond it. The person who fits perfectly into the social world rarely questions the nature of reality. They're too busy living inside the illusion. But the person who doesn't fit, who's always felt different, who's never been able to accept things at face value, that person is in a unique position. The pain of not belonging can become the fuel for seeking a deeper belonging. The loneliness can become the space where you finally find connection with something larger than any social clique could offer. Einstein wasn't romanticizing loneliness. He knew its pain very well, but he was pointing to a possibility. The possibility of transformation. The possibility that exactly what seems to separate you from others might be what connects you to the whole. Let me tell you something about how Einstein lived this in practice. He spent the last 20 years of his life in Princeton, New Jersey, working on a theory that most physicists thought was impossible. A unified field theory that would connect all the forces of nature in a single mathematical description. Almost no one believed he could do it. Many thought he'd lost his ability to contribute to modern physics. And yet, he continued day after day, alone in his office, working on equations that no one else thought were relevant. Why? Because he wasn't seeking social approval. He wasn't trying to impress colleagues. He wasn't competing for awards or recognition. He was following something deeper, an intuition that there is an underlying order to the universe, a mathematical beauty that connects everything. He never completed that theory. He died in 1955 with 12 pages of equations on his bedside table, still trying. And most people would see that as failure. 20 years of work, with no result. But Einstein didn't see it that way. He saw the search as the purpose, the connection to truth, even when the truth remains partially hidden, was what gave meaning to his life. Not the outcome, not the recognition, the search itself. And that's exactly what he meant by belonging to the invisible community of those who strive for truth, beauty, and justice. You don't have to succeed to belong. You don't have to arrive somewhere. The search itself is belonging. Think about that in relation to your own life. You may never fit into conventional social groups. You may never have that feeling of easy belonging that some people seem to have. You may spend your whole life feeling slightly out of place in any social situation. But you can belong to the search, belong to the truth, belong to the mystery, belong to the very structure of the universe that's trying to understand itself through you. This isn't some second-rate consolation prize for those who can't make friends. It's a completely different way of seeing existence, a way that Einstein considered more truthful than the superficial social connection that most people seek. Now, I need to be straight with you about something. Nothing I've said will make your loneliness disappear magically. If you're going through a tough time of isolation right now, intellectually understanding what Einstein said won't solve it immediately. The pain is real. The desire for connection is real. The frustration of not fitting in is real. But what can change is the context in which you see that pain. If you see your difference as a defect to be fixed, you're at war with yourself. Every moment of loneliness becomes evidence of your failure. Every uncomfortable social situation confirms that there's something wrong with you. But if you see your difference as Einstein saw his, as a characteristic of a consciousness that's perceiving something, the war can end. You can stop fighting against your own nature. You can start working with it instead of against it. And that shift in perspective can lead to the transformation Einstein described, from the painful loneliness of youth to the delightful solitude of maturity. Einstein died in April of 1955. In his final moments, he spoke words in German that the nurse couldn't understand. They're lost forever. But we do know that he died in peace. We know that he refused surgery that could have prolonged his life. He said he'd already done his part and that he wanted to go when it was his time. A man who spent his life feeling different from others found peace in the end. Not because you finally fit in, not because you finally became normal, but because you found a way to connect that didn't depend on social approval. And that possibility exists for you too. You're watching this because something resonated, because the experience of feeling like an outsider is all too familiar, because you recognized your own story in the words of Albert Einstein. Before I wrap things up, I need to ask you something. This channel exists to reveal truths that have been hidden or misunderstood, truths that can transform the lives of people who feel lost or different. Producing this kind of content requires deep research and considerable time, and frankly, few channels are willing to talk about these topics in this way. If you value this kind of content, if you feel that what's been said here has touched something real inside you, please consider supporting the channel through Super Thanks. It's not an obligation, but every bit of support allows me to keep creating videos like this. And it signifies that you're voting for a type of content that acknowledges the experience of people who feel like they're marching to the beat of a different drum. Now do it for the ultimate truth that Albert Einstein wanted you to know. You were never broken. The feeling of being different isn't evidence that something went wrong with you. It's evidence that you're perceiving something that most people don't. The optical delusion of consciousness that most people accept as reality. The idea that you're an isolated individual navigating a world of strangers. That's the illusion. The truth is that you're part of something infinite, connected to everything that exists, never truly alone. And when you start to live from that truth, everything changes. The loneliness transforms. The pain of not belonging gives way to a different kind of belonging. The war against your own nature can finally end. Albert Einstein spent his life searching for the equation that would connect all the forces of the universe. He never completely found it. But in the letters he left behind, he showed us something as valuable as any equation. He showed us that the connection we seek already exists. It's always existed. The question isn't about creating it, it's about perceiving it. And you, who have spent your life feeling different, may be closer to that perception than you even realize. Do you agree with Albert Einstein? Or do you think that feeling different is really a problem to be solved? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your perspective. Have you always felt different from others? Comment yes or no. And if you want to share when you first realized you were different, tell us in the comments. I'll be replying to everyone in the first couple of hours.